Is share with you my genealogical tale of becoming a member of this organization. It is quite a story, and it's actually a story that very few people outside of my immediate family know, but I kind of feel like it's something that needs to be shared because I think that there are other people that can benefit from it. And I hope that maybe in the course of listening, you'll learn something not only about the organization, but a little bit about my family lines as well. I'm going to run through very quickly a quick slideshow that kind of gives some background about the Society of the Cincinnati. What the Society of the Cincinnati is, it is men that are descended from continental officers from the Revolutionary War. And there are only about 3,500 members of this organization worldwide. There are members from, of course, the original 13 colonies. Every member is joined through their particular colony or state. So I am a member of the Pennsylvania Society, which is where my ancestor resided. However, there are members from France because, of course, the French helped secure our independence. So there's a significant number of membership as far as the society is concerned in France as well. And it was established right after the war as a kind of a common gathering ground for the officers who served basically under George Washington. They wanted to stay in contact, and I can understand that. They went through a lot together. And it was established on May 13th, 1783. The attachment of the leaders of the American Revolution to the patriotic idealism of Cincinnatus. And Cincinnatus is a Roman character who, after serving in the Roman army, came home and traded his sword for a plow, and basically turned in his being a soldier for just being a citizen. And that's what these men kind of viewed themselves as. The motto, and I'm not going to try to read that because I'm not versed in Latin, but it means he gave up everything to serve the Republic. Major General Henry Knox, who was the artillery general for George Washington, was the original creator of the society. He, of course, and several others met to try to figure out what to do to be able to keep this core of men, which were very special as part of their family, their extended family. And out of it came the Society of Cincinnati. And this is a rendering of Cincinnatus himself returning home and telling the soldiers in the army that he was finished with his soldiering, and the cattle here is symbolic. He's just saying, I'm done. I'm going to be a citizen. And that's pretty much what the Society of the Cincinnati reflected, was the fact that these men now were done being soldiers and they were going to become regular citizens. This is the original charter, if you want to call it that, of the Society of Cincinnati. They have what they call the immutable principles, which are the backbone of what the organization is. Preserve inviolate those exalted rights and liberties of human nature for which they fought and bled. Promote and cherish between the respective states, union, and national honor. They call it themselves the One Society of Friends, and that was something that George Washington coined. He wanted it to be something that would be not military-based more than friend-based, but at the same time rooted in the service in the military. William Moultrie, who Chip Bragg did a great book about, if you haven't read that, Crescent Moon over South Carolina, biography of General Moultrie, said about the society, I believe there's scarcely an American officer but most cheerfully lays by his sword and uniform. I most sincerely do, and with a heartfelt joy, return to the callings of country life free from the tumultuous busy scenes of war. Cincinnatus himself never returned to his plow better pleased. And if you'll notice, you'll see this in a lot of the illustrations of these gentlemen. It's eagle, and that's the symbol, the medallion of the society. And I'm going to pass this around so you guys can see it. This is an example of the eagle, and that's called the Tench-Tillman design. There are several designs of the eagles, but that one is the original. George Washington and his generals and his commanders, and he was the first president general of the Society of the Cincinnati. And again, very honored to do so. And here's an image of General Washington with his eagle as well. General Baron von Steuben, who of course he's a fantastic story in and of his own right, came from Germany and was instrumental in taking a bunch of farmers and citizens in the United States and turning them into an army. He was the first treasurer general of the Society of Cincinnati as well, even though his use of the English language was limited. And this is L'Enfant. He was the designer of the eagle. This is an image of an original watercolor that he created himself that showed what he wanted it to look like. And he took it back to France and had about 25 of those made originally. And this is interesting. I'll get to the diploma in a second. This is the eagle that was designed by Lafayette for George Washington. And it is a unique design. And the Society still produces similar eagles to present to members that have distinguished themselves with their service. And Bill Rayford here in Thomasville, who is the President General, received one of these this year, as a matter of fact. The original eagle that was presented to Washington was sold at auction 2 years ago for $4.5 million.
Oh my gosh.
This is the diamond eagle. This is worn by the President General. And this was a design that was again made in France and brought back over here, and George Washington was the original to wear it, and every President General since has worn this eagle in official functions. Mr. Rayford, when he had it, took it upon himself to count all the jewels. 160 diamonds, 28 emeralds, 10 rubies, gold, silver, and enamel. And the scene that's depicted in the eagle is the scene of Cincinnati returning home. George Washington had china designed. That was Cincinnati, Society of Cincinnati China, and it is still available, reproductions of it. We've got some pieces at our house, and it is beautiful. And it has Lady Liberty designed with blowing the trumpet of freedom and the eagle as part of the symbolism. And you can find those every now and then. There's another example. Mount Vernon sells these at their gift shop. Another example of some of the china. This is the diploma. A lot of symbolism here. And again, this was designed by Pierre L'Enfant. And the eagle, of course, at the top, and it gets into all the verbiage and the symbolism of, again, freedom being trumpeted. But there's a close-up here, I hope, of the lower left corner, which is very interesting. This is supposed to represent the Queen and Britain, and the lightning bolts coming from basically Cincinnati and the warrior over here, and the Cincinnati flag are chasing off the symbolism that's associated with Britain. The British flag is under his foot and under the shield, and the chains that are mounting between these two flagpoles here with the British flag are broken, which symbolize again that America has broken free and now is its own country. Not everybody approved of the Cincinnati. These three gentlemen, which you may recognize, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and John Adams, did not approve. They felt that this was an effort amongst the military elite to create a subversive type of organization that would be looking to pull a coup to take over the government, which was never the case. You've heard the story of Benjamin Franklin wanting the national bird to be the wild turkey. I'm sure you've heard that. That was based on the fact that the Society of Cincinnati adopted the eagle as its symbol. The eagle was adopted as the Society of the Cincinnati symbol before the United States had adopted it. In fact, the bald eagle coming as the national symbol came through the Society of Cincinnati. That's where that came from. He really wasn't endorsing it as much as he was jabbing in the ribs the guys who were joined in the society. And the reason that none of these gentlemen were invited to be a part of the society where they weren't soldiers. These were diplomats. These were politicians. Now, eventually, Mr. Franklin became an honorary member, so he came around and was very much approving of it after he was asked to be a member. And Jefferson and Adams and all of them eventually kind of figured out that it was an honorable thing that they were doing, so they all approved eventually, but not originally. Lars and Isabel Anderson were socialites, very wealthy in Washington, D.C. back in the mid 20th century. And when they passed away, they bequeathed their home to the Society of the Cincinnati as an international headquarters. This is Anderson House, and it is located right in downtown Washington, D.C. And to say it is opulent would be an understatement.
Oh my goodness.
They had the means to be able to outfit it appropriately. This is a presentation room. In fact, this was a slide that Chip Bragg provided. Chip was very nervous because he did a program in this room. And you can see again, the surroundings are a little bit more elegant than what we're used to seeing whenever we're doing presentations for folks. Again, just some scenes through the house, quote unquote. Ballroom. So this is a life-size statue of General Washington that's out in front of the house. What's very interesting about Anderson House is as a member of the Society of Cincinnati, you have lifetime access to the house for no charge. So if for instance, we're taking our family up next week and we'll be staying for 5 days and they don't charge anything for the members to stay there. They get their money through their general fund, which is just contributions that are made on top, like a yearly type thing, but it's available for any members to use as many times as they want to. Winston Churchill received an honorary eagle back in the 1950s, and this is a great quote from him, where he said, I'm in the interesting situation of having fought on both sides in the war between us and we. But he was quite honored, quite honored. Now let me get to my story very quickly. Of course, most of you know that I'm actively involved in the Sons of Confederate Veterans. And Bill Rayford, when Bill moved here, excuse me, allergies again. Bill joined the Sons of Confederate Veterans. His grandfather was a commander at Andersonville from here in Thomasville. And through our association, Bill made me aware of the Society of Cincinnati, which I was not aware of, to be honest with you. And through conversations with him, I knew that I had a Continental officer that was a part of my family line, Captain James Wilson. The Wilson Cemetery out on the Moultrie Road, for those of you who are familiar with that, is our family cemetery. And Allen Wilson founded that cemetery in October of 1826 when his wife died. Allen Wilson was one of the original Patriot settlers here in Thomas County. He had served in the War of 1812. His wife contracted malaria while they were here in the summer of 1826. He had received a land grant through his military service. And as far as I know, in Thomas County, that may be the first cemetery that was ever established that I'm aware of because of her death in 1826.
Don't forget Metcalf.
And Metcalf too. That one, yeah, that one goes. The settlers there go even further back. Wilson had enough land. Basically, I've been told that his land from his land grant went basically from Walmart to Coolidge, if you wanted to know that. But the only original piece of it that still remains is that 2 acres there where the Wilson Cemetery is. His father, Captain James Wilson, served in the Continental Line in South Carolina and North Carolina, and I knew this. This was part of my family's genealogy. And I felt like I had a pretty straight line to be able to get into the Society of Cincinnati. And what's interesting about this organization is only one person can claim access to an ancestor. They call it a propositus. So let's say that Mr. Stevens and I are brothers, and we discover an ancestor that served as a Continental officer. Only one of us can claim him for membership into that group. It's not collateral. It has to be direct. And that makes it so that you pretty well have to have a straight, unclaimed line to be able to get in. It's not like the Sons of the American Revolution or the Sons of the Confederacy, where multiple people can join under one person or one ancestor. It's one-on-one. Well, with a little bit of research and doing some digging, Bill Rayford and I were disappointed to find out that Captain Wilson's line was claimed. And Chip Bragg, being one of my best friends and a part of the Sons of Confederate Veterans as well, overheard the conversation between Bill and I, and he went home and started doing some research. And within like 2 weeks, he found an ancestor that was unclaimed and joined in and got in with no problem at all. And here I sat, which was the original impetus of the discussion to begin with, still trying to find somebody. And I went to Doris, and I went to all what I call the bloodhounds of the UDC, who know how to chase all these lines down, and got them to help, employed their help to try to find another officer somewhere. We found all kinds of militia officers. We found all kinds of soldiers. I mean, Doris said the last count, I was up in the 40s with the number of revolutionary soldiers that she had been able to find, but no Continental officers. I kept looking. I joined all the online genealogical sites and looked and just could not find anything. And finally, in about 2014 or so, I pretty well gave up. And this search started about 2006 or so. And I felt like I was at a dead end. Well, here's where the story gets intriguing. I never met my biological father. My mom, when she was 19, got pregnant from a young man in Jacksonville, Florida, and she never heard from him again. She knew who he was. She knew about family, quote unquote, so forth. And through a very almost inexplicable series of events, 4 sisters that I never knew I had found me in autumn of 2012. And of course, this intrigued me because it was a direct connection to really who I am and what I am. And through researching and learning about my new family, I found a Continental officer that was unclaimed, Second Lieutenant Abraham Wood from Pennsylvania. Now, here's where it gets a little complicated. The Society of Cincinnati, being a genealogically based organization, they want indisputable proof that you are connected to this person that you're wanting to claim. Well, of course, now this gets a little complicated for me. So we did all the DNA tests and did all of the necessaries, and all of that came back 100%. And after a series of letters written from my 4 sisters and the wife of my biological father, who has basically adopted me as her own son now, because I am the only son that he ever sired, I was approved for membership in 2014 from the Pennsylvania Society. Now, it would be easy to end the story there, but that would be too easy. As it turns out, Lieutenant Wood, who served in the 4th Pennsylvania Battalion, was wounded in the Battle of Brandywine and served in a unit called the Invalids, which was wounded soldiers who were able to serve but not on the front lines. They were used as guard duty. They were used as couriers and so forth. Lieutenant Wood served for basically 6 years, from 1776 till 1782. We ran into a bump in the road. In researching Lieutenant Wood's record, it turns out on November 14th, 1780, he was court-martialed and found guilty of conduct unbecoming the character of an officer and gentleman on the charge of keeping a tippling house and shuffleboard and entertaining soldiers. And he was found guilty of this court-martial. Now, first off, I didn't know what a tippling house was. A tippling house basically is a country tavern where they serve homemade beer.
Oh, goodness.
Now, I didn't know that playing shuffleboard could be considered conduct unbecoming an officer and a gentleman, but apparently, in the Revolutionary War period, shuffleboard was a game of chance. It was a gambling game. Never in 100 years would I have thought that was the case, or maybe I should say never in 250 years would I have thought that would have been the case, but that was the case. Well, as it turns out, the mental image there intrigued me because we think about revolutionary soldiers sitting around pubs with their pipes in Philadelphia or New York or Boston talking about the events of the day. But here's a little country house where the wife of Lieutenant Abraham Wood ran this tippling house for years before he even started his service. It was a community gathering point. And much like we have little watering holes out in Thomas County and in different places around, that's what this was. When he was accused of his crime, he was charged by his commanding officer, Colonel Louis Nicola, who was in charge of most of the Pennsylvania troops that included the invalids and the 4th Pennsylvania and the 5th Pennsylvania. It basically was his commanding officer. The only line of defense that he felt, or the best line of defense I should say, that he felt he should employ was to go directly to the top. And what you see on this screen is a letter that was written from Lieutenant Abraham Wood to George Washington, explaining his case and explaining his reasoning why his wife ran this tippling house to be able to feed the children while he was off at war. Now, I won't try to read that to you. Lieutenant Wood was not an educated man, and much like a lot of our ancestors, a lot of the verbiage here is written as it would sound, not so much as it was supposed to be spelled. He sent it to General Washington and finished off the line here, and I love this. He says, "I hope your excellency will take my case into your consideration." And it said, "Conscious of having ever done my duty as a soldier and officer in the field with honor and reputation before my wounds and infirmities caused me to be transferred to an invalid corps. I've been commanded by Colonel Nicola, who has now put me under arrest because of my wife keeping the tavern and allowing service or allowing the playing of shuffleboard." And he finished it off. He said, "If I must leave service after serving my country now near 5 years, I hope your excellency will allow me to resign." On January 2nd, 1781, the court-martial's sentence of guilty was upheld by General Washington. However, and this is where it gets a little interesting too, based on his account to General Washington, or perhaps healing some wounds that may have opened up with Colonel Nicola, the sentence was never placed into effect. And he served until the next year, until January of 1782, when he resigned, and he was given the opportunity to resign honorably instead of dishonorably. So here I am, applying for membership through a new family with ancestors that I didn't even know I had. And I send all this into Pennsylvania. Well, first off, a very interesting little side note. And of course, I've already told you that I was accepted, so you know that there's a happy ending to the story. But here's the two twists. In the known history of the Society of the Cincinnati, there have been 2 members that have been allowed into the society with, if you want to call it, an illegitimate relationship being the cause of their existence. That would be me and Alexander Hamilton. How about that? After I sent my application in. In a few weeks, I received an email from the Pennsylvania Society membership chairman named Cliff Lewis. And here's what it read. Lieutenant Wood, you're an officer of worth. My temper got in the way, for which I can only plead stress. Your loyalty to our cause and the Corps outweighs by far what should have been a minor issue that I so allowed to escalate that His Excellency the General was asked to intervene. I ask you to accept my regrets for the inconvenience this has caused you over the passing of time. I remain, sir, your humble and obedient servant, Colonel Louis Nicola, Invalid Corps. Cliff Lewis joined the Society in Cincinnati based on his line and his ancestor, who was Colonel Louis Nicola, the person, the commanding officer that had court-martialed my ancestor. Cliff knew of this situation. He had read about it in his propositus, his notes, and it had always bothered him because he felt that the sentence was a little unfair, given the fact that this tippling house and shuffleboard establishment had been in existence before Lieutenant Wood had ever served as a soldier. It seemed a little bit petty that at this point in time, because of something that had happened clearly between the two of them, that the charges were pursued as they were. So it gave Cliff an opportunity to set the record straight on behalf of his ancestor. Think about the odds of here 250 years removed from this happening, the two lines of these two men intersecting again from Pennsylvania to South Georgia. Needless to say, the inclusion of me into this has been quite a journey. And it makes it special for me. There are a lot of men who are part of this organization who kind of take it for granted. The line has been handed down to them through the years, and it's just something that they have. It's been enlightening, and to know that one side of the story felt that a wrong done by his ancestor in haste had finally been righted, and the other side had received some measure of justification, makes it a really, really cool little tale. And I can imagine that somewhere up there, Colonel Nicola and Lieutenant Wood are sitting in a tippling house playing shuffleboard, smiling together.